The emptiness of space surrounded the once bustling Zendari homeworld. Where thousands of ships from across the galaxies had once docked and traded, now only a handful remained, all bearing the blue and white insignia of Earth. Ambassador Jaiwo Park stood alone at the viewport in the diplomatic wing of Zendari Central Station. Her dark eyes reflected the stars as she watched the last Alliance vessel disappear into hyperspace. The Galactic Council's quarantine would officially begin in less than 6 hours. After that, any ship attempting to enter or leave Zendari space would be considered hostile and destroyed without warning. "They're really all gone," said a quiet voice behind her. Jaiwo turned to see Captain Hyunjin, his usually immaculate uniform wrinkled from days without proper rest. The military officer looked as exhausted as she felt. 17 species represented on the council, Jaiwo said bitterly. 17 advanced civilizations who claim to value compassion and progress. And they all ran. The first reports of the plague had seemed minor, a few isolated cases of genetic instability among Zendari colonists in the Outer Rim. But within weeks, the mysterious affliction had spread to every Zendari settlement. The proud alien race, known for their stable genetics and remarkable perception abilities, were suddenly suffering unpredictable mutations. Some victims simply collapsed as their internal organs failed. Others developed painful growths or lost control of their shape-holding abilities. "The medical team needs to see you," Hyunjin said, handing her a tablet. "Dr. Dohyun has some findings you should review before your call with Earth." Jaiwo nodded, taking one last look at the empty docking stations. She had disobeyed direct orders by keeping the human delegation on Zender Prime. The council had commanded all representatives to withdraw immediately. Earth's delegation had been the only one to abstain from the quarantine vote. The walk to the medical facility took them through the Zendari Central Market, now eerily quiet. The few Zendari still healthy enough to be in public moved slowly, their translucent skin showing the dim pulsing patterns of fear and despair. They stared at the humans with mixed expressions. Some showed gratitude, others suspicion. "They don't understand why we stayed," Hyunjin commented quietly. "They've been abandoned by the entire galactic community," Jaiwo replied. "Trust doesn't come easily after that." The medical facility had once been a cultural exchange center. Now beds lined the walls, filled with suffering Zendari. Dr. Dohyun Kim looked up from his workstation as they entered. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept in days. "Ambassador, you need to see this," he said, gesturing to his microscope. Jaiwo looked through the lens at what appeared to be Zendari's cellular material. "What am I looking at?" "Proof this isn't natural," Dohyun explained. "These markers here, they've been engineered. This plague was created specifically to target Zendari biology." The revelation sent a chill through the room. "You're certain?" Jaiwo asked. "Completely. This is biological warfare, not some natural evolution or mutation." Hyunjin's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. "Then the quarantine isn't about containing a disease. It's about letting someone finish what they started." A soft chime from Jaiwo's communication device interrupted them. It was a direct message from Earth Command, marked urgent. She stepped away to read it privately. The message was brief and devastating. "Council threatens expulsion of Earth from all galactic affairs. Return immediately. Mission unauthorized." Jaiwo deleted the message. She had 6 hours before the quarantine sealed them in with no way home. "Ambassador?" Hyunjin asked, watching her expression carefully. Before she could respond, Elder Take of the Zendari High Council entered the facility. Unlike many of his kind, he still maintained his regal bearing despite the visible signs of plague beginning to affect him. "You have received your recall orders," Take stated in the musical tones of his people. It wasn't a question. "We have," Jaiwo admitted. "Yet your ships make no preparation for departure." Take's inner light pulsed with confusion. Jaiwo glanced at her team, Dohyun bent over his research, Hyunjin standing tall despite his exhaustion, and the dozen other humans who had chosen to remain. "We need answers before we can leave," she told the elder. "Someone engineered this plague to target your people specifically. We need to know why." Elder Take's inner light flickered with surprise. You would defy your counsel for us? When all others have abandoned our people to die? Jaiwo looked through the window at the stars beyond, the same stars that watched over Earth, and Zender Prime, and all the worlds that had turned their backs on a suffering people. Sometimes being human means standing alone, she said softly. We're staying, Elder Take. For as long as it takes. Outside, the final warning beacon activated, signaling the beginning of the quarantine. There would be no going back now. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the converted laboratory, casting long shadows across the equipment. Dr. Do-Hyun Kim had not slept in nearly 30 hours, but he refused to stop working. Each test revealed something more alarming than the last. This makes no sense, he muttered, rubbing his tired eyes. The Zendari tissue samples under his microscope showed patterns unlike anything in the medical database. 3 weeks had passed since the quarantine began, trapping the human team on Zender Prime. In that time, Do-Hyun had made disturbing discoveries about the plague ravaging the alien population. A soft chime announced someone entering the lab. He looked up to see Ambassador Jaiwo approaching with Elder Take. The Zendari elder moved carefully, his once fluid movements now stiff from the early stages of the disease. You requested an urgent meeting, Jaiwo said, her voice betraying her concern. Do-Hyun nodded and gestured to his screens. The plague isn't natural. Look at these molecular structures. He pointed to a complex pattern highlighted in red. These sequences are synthetic. Someone engineered this disease to target specific Zendari genetic markers. Elder Take's translucent skin pulsed with distress patterns, ripples of deep purple moving through his body. Who would do this to us? I don't know, Do-Hyun admitted. But they knew exactly what they were doing. The disease attacks the very genes that make Zendari unique. Jaiwo studied the images carefully. Could this be why the council was so quick to establish the quarantine? Maybe they knew more than they admitted. The three fell silent, considering the implications. If the Galactic Council had known this was an engineered plague, their abandonment of the Zendari was even more callous than it first appeared. There's something else, Do-Hyun said, changing the display. The disease specifically targets the neural pathways connected to the Zendari's perception abilities. The Zendari were known throughout the galaxies for their unique ability to perceive energy patterns in spacetime. This gift had made them valuable navigators and scientists. Elder Take moved closer to the screen. Our perception is what made us valuable allies. And now it's killing you, Do-Hyun said softly. Later that evening, Do-Hyun continued his research while Jaiwo met with Captain Hyunjin to discuss security concerns. The human compound had been established in what was once a cultural center, now repurposed for their mission. Our supplies will last another 2 months, Hyunjin reported. After that, we'll need to find local alternatives. Before Jaiwo could respond, the building shook violently. A distant boom echoed across the Zendari capital city. The lights flickered and then stabilized. What was that? Jaiwo demanded, already moving toward the command center. The answer came moments later when the communications officer called through the emergency system. Unknown vessels have breached the quarantine zone. They're targeting the northern settlements. Hyunjin's team rushed to defensive positions while Jaiwo and Do-Hyun joined Elder Take at the observation platform. From their elevated position, they could see bright flashes on the horizon where the attacks were taking place. Those aren't Council enforcement ships, Take said, his voice trembling. The design is unknown to me. 3 sleek vessels moved through the night sky with frightening precision. They fired only on specific targets, Zendari research facilities and medical centers. They're finishing what the plague started, Jaiwo realized aloud. Someone wants the Zendari extinct. Do-Hyun watched in horror as one of the vessels turned toward the capital. They're coming this way. The humans had brought limited defensive capabilities, never expecting to fight off an attack. As the mysterious ship approached, Hyunjin organized what weapons they had. We need to move the research, Jaiwo ordered. Everything Do-Hyun has discovered needs to be secured. In the chaos that followed, the humans and Zendari worked together to evacuate the most critical patients and research materials. The attacking vessel launched precise strikes against buildings that held the largest concentrations of Zendari. "They know exactly where to hit," Hyunjin observed grimly. "This isn't random." When the ship moved directly over the human compound, everyone braced for the worst. Instead, it hovered for several moments, scanning the area, then moved on without attacking. "They ignored us," Jaiwoo said in disbelief. "Not ignored," Elder Take corrected, his perception abilities allowing him to see what the others couldn't. "They assessed you as non-threatening." Do-hyun looked up from his secured research materials. "Or they don't want to kill humans. They're only targeting Zendari." As the attack continued through the night, a pattern emerged. The mysterious ships destroyed Zendari research facilities with surgical precision but avoided direct engagement with the human team. By morning, the attackers had vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving smoking ruins and more questions than answers. "Now we know for certain," Jaiwo said as she surveyed the damage. "Someone engineered this plague, and when it wasn't working fast enough, they came to finish the job." Elder Take's skin pulsed with determination. "But they didn't account for human curiosity." Do-hyun nodded, already planning his next tests. "And they certainly didn't account for human stubbornness." The team gathered their equipment, prepared to move to a safer location. The mystery had deepened, but so had their resolve to solve it. The emergency shuttle broke atmosphere with a shudder, pushing Ambassador Jaiwoo Park back into her seat. After 6 weeks trapped on Zender Prime, she was returning to Earth with evidence that would change everything if she could get anyone to believe her. Approaching the jump point in 2 minutes, the pilot announced. Jaiwoo clutched the secured data case tighter. Inside were Dr. Do-hyun's findings and samples that proved not only was the Zendari plague engineered, but by whom. The truth had seemed impossible until they witnessed it themselves. The shuttle shook again as it accelerated toward the temporary wormhole that would take them home. The Galactic Council's quarantine remained in effect, but Captain Hyunjin had discovered a brief gap in the enforcement net, enough time for one small ship to slip through. 1 minute to jump, the pilot said. No sign of pursuit. Jaiwoo allowed herself a small sigh of relief. The rest of the human team had remained on Zender Prime, continuing their work with the Zendari. They were counting on her to bring back help. The shuttle lurched into the wormhole. Stars streaked by in a blur of light. Jaiwoo closed her eyes, remembering the horrifying discovery that had prompted this desperate mission. They had found the truth 3 days after the attack on the Zendari capital. Do-hyun had been examining unusual energy readings when Elder Take suddenly collapsed, his perception abilities sensing something the humans could not. "They're here," the Elder had whispered. "All around us." It took specialized equipment, recalibrated based on Take's guidance, for the humans to see what the Zendari naturally perceived, the faint outlines of energy-based entities moving through the very fabric of space around them. Entities that had existed unknown alongside physical life for millennia. The Void Collective. 48 hours later, Jaiwoo stood before Earth's Security Council, the highest authority on human military and diplomatic matters. The 12 council members watched with expressions ranging from skepticism to alarm as she presented their findings. The Void Collective has manipulated galactic politics for thousands of years, Jaiwoo explained, displaying the evidence on the chamber's screens. They exist primarily as energy patterns that most species cannot detect. But the Zendari can. Defense Minister Sun Woo leaned forward, her gray hair catching the light. "And you believe these entities created the plague?" "We have proof." Dr. Do-hyun isolated energy signatures embedded in the plague's molecular structure that matched those of the collective. They engineered this disease specifically to target the perception centers in Zendari physiology. Admiral Taeho, the oldest member of the council, shook his head. "This sounds like science fiction, Ambassador Park." "I understand your skepticism," Jaiwoo replied. "I felt the same until I saw them myself, using equipment modified to detect their energy patterns." She played the recording they had made, shadowy forms moving through solid matter, gathering around infected Zendari, feeding on their energy as the plague weakened them. The Void Collective has been harvesting energy from living beings for countless generations, she continued. The Zendari were the only species who could naturally perceive them, making them a threat. The council chambers fell silent as the implications sank in. If what you're saying is true, President Minsa finally said, then the Galactic Council's quarantine was influenced by the collective, Jaiwo finished. They've infiltrated the highest levels of galactic government. We believe several council members may be under their direct influence. The Security Council debated for hours. Some believed her evidence, others demanded more proof. As the arguments continued, an aide rushed in with an urgent message. We've received a transmission from the Galactic Council, the aide announced. They're demanding we cease all contact with the Zendari immediately or face expulsion from all galactic affairs. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. The Void Collective knew Jaiwu had returned to Earth with the truth. They're afraid, she realized. For the first time in their existence, they're afraid of being exposed. President Minso stood, his decision made. Tell the Galactic Council that Earth respectfully declines to abandon the Zendari people in their time of need. The response was almost immediate. Within hours, reports came in of strange energy fluctuations near human colonies on the outer planets. Then came the attacks, ships unlike any seen before, targeting communication arrays and research facilities. The collective is striking directly now, Admiral Tejo reported during an emergency session. They're not hiding anymore. Jaiwo watched the footage of the attacks with a growing sense of dread and determination. They see us as a threat now too. Because we chose to help the Zendari. Defense Minister Sun Wu turned to her. Can we fight something we can barely see? The Zendari can see them, Jaiwo answered. And Dr. Dohayan thinks humans have a unique advantage. Our brain patterns are naturally resistant to the collective's influence. President Minsu nodded gravely. Then it seems humanity has chosen its side in this conflict. As the first defense plans were drawn up, Jaiwo knew there would be no turning back. Earth had decided to stand with the Zendari against an enemy as old as the stars themselves. The ancient enemy had revealed itself, and the fight for survival had begun. The bridge of the ESS Defiance hummed with quiet tension as Commander Miho studied the tactical display. The human warship led a fleet unlike any seen before in the galaxy, 26 Earth vessels surrounded by 14 Zendari ships, their crystalline hulls reflecting the distant starlight. Void energy signatures detected ahead, reported Tactical Officer Gion, her fingers moving quickly across her console. The nebula is full of them. Miho nodded. 3 months had passed since Earth had officially allied with the Zendari against the Void Collective. In that time, Dr. Dohayan's early treatment prototypes had allowed some Zendari to recover enough of their abilities to join the fight. All ships maintain formation, Miho ordered. Remind Zendari vessels to keep their perception screens active. The fleet approached the edge of the Violet Nebula cautiously. Intelligence gathered from previous engagements suggested this cloudy expanse of gas and dust contained the collective's nexus point, the central hub from which they coordinated their activities across the galaxy. Commander, called the communications officer, incoming transmission from the Zendari flagship. The main screen switched to show Captain Sara of the Zendari vessel Lightseeker. Unlike most of her kind, Sora had shown natural resistance to the plague, her perception abilities still largely intact. Commander Miho, she greeted, her translucent features rippling with the blue patterns that indicated focus. My sensors detect unusual energy concentrations at these coordinates. A set of numbers appeared on the tactical display. That must be the nexus, Miho concluded. Gion, adjust our approach vector. The human Zendari fleet moved deeper into the nebula, visibility decreasing with each passing minute. The Defiance shuddered as strange energy waves buffeted its shields. They know we're here, Gion warned. Miho had expected no less. Launch perception probes. Dozens of small devices spread out ahead of the fleet, designed by Earth engineers based on Zendari technology. They created a network that translated the void entity's energy signatures into visual data the human ships could process. The main screen filled with swirling patterns as the probes began transmitting. What had appeared to be empty space was actually teeming with void entities, their dark forms moving with purpose toward the incoming fleet. All ships, defensive pattern Alpha, Miho ordered. Zendari vessels focus on detection and targeting. Human ships provide physical defense. The battle erupted suddenly and violently. Void entities swarmed toward the fleet, their touch causing systems failures and energy drains in any ship they contacted. The human vessels fired specialized weapons developed to disrupt the entities' energy patterns, while Zendari ships used their natural abilities to predict and track the collective's movements. Escort ships 3 and 5 reporting heavy damage, called the communications officer. Their shields are failing. On the tactical display, Miho watched 2 human vessels move to protect the vulnerable Zendari ships. It was a dance they had practiced for weeks, each species covering the other's weaknesses. Stay on course for the Nexus, he instructed. We won't get another chance at this. A massive surge of energy slammed into the Defiance, sending crew members tumbling across the bridge. Damage reports flooded in from all decks. They're concentrating their attack on us, Gion reported, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. They know we're leading the assault. Miho helped a fallen officer back to his station. How far to the Nexus? 3 minutes at current speed. The ship shuddered again as another attack hit them. On the screen, Miho saw 3 escort vessels surrounded by swirling masses of void entities. One by one, their lights flickered and died. Escort ships 6, 7, and 9 are not responding, the communications officer announced grimly. Miho felt the weight of those lives on his shoulders but forced himself to focus on their mission. Continue approach. All power to forward shields. The Defiance pushed deeper into the nebula, with the remaining fleet following in tight formation. The void attacks intensified, becoming more desperate as they neared the Nexus. 1 minute to target, Gion called out. Suddenly, Captain Sora's voice came through the communications system. Commander, my vessel will clear your path. Before Miho could respond, the Lightseeker accelerated ahead of the Defiance, directly into the densest concentration of void entities. The Zendari ship's hull glowed brilliantly as it activated all its perception systems at maximum power, creating a momentary tunnel through the collective's defenses. The Lightseeker is sacrificing itself, Gion said softly. Miho straightened in his chair. We won't waste their sacrifice. All ships, follow that opening. Prepare to deploy the resonance device. The fleet surged forward through the gap created by the Lightseeker's brave action. As they broke through to the center of the nebula, a strange structure became visible, not physical, but a complex pattern of energy that pulsed like a heart. The Nexus, Miho breathed. Deploy the device now. From the Defiance's launch bay, a small probe shot toward the energy pattern. It contained a revolutionary technology combining human ingenuity with Zendari perception science, designed to disrupt the very frequency that allowed the Void Collective to maintain cohesion. Device activated, Gion reported. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a blinding flash of light erupted from the Nexus point, expanding outward in a wave that washed over the fleet. Every screen on the bridge went blank. When visibility returned, the nebula appeared empty. The swirling void entities had vanished. Did we succeed? Someone whispered. Miho looked to the Zendari ship nearest them. Its captain appeared on screen, her translucent features pulsing with bright white, the color of joy. The Nexus is destroyed, she confirmed. The Void Collective's hold is broken. A cheer went up across the bridge, quickly tempered by the knowledge of what it had cost them. 3 escort ships lost. The Lightseeker sacrificed. Hundreds of lives from both species given to secure this victory. Miho gave the order to return home. The unexpected alliance had faced its greatest test and prevailed. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the Galactic Assembly Hall, illuminating the hundreds of delegates gathered for this historic session. 6 months had passed since the battle at the Void Collective's Nexus, and today marked the formal reinstatement of the Zendari into galactic society. Ambassador Jaiwo Park adjusted the sleeve of her formal diplomatic uniform, trying to make her prosthetic left arm more comfortable. She had lost her real arm during the final battle, one of many sacrifices made during the conflict. The metallic replacement still felt foreign, but the Zendari medical team had promised that sensation would improve with time. Nervous? Asked Dr. Dohayan, standing beside her at the entrance to the assembly chamber. Jai Wu smiled. After everything we've faced? Hardly. Yet they both knew the significance of today's proceedings. For the first time since the quarantine, representatives from all 17 galactic species would formally acknowledge their mistake in abandoning the Zendari. More importantly, they would recognize the role humanity had played in exposing the Void Collective's centuries-long manipulation. The Assembly will now recognize Ambassador Jaiwo Park of Earth, announced the Assembly Speaker, a tall being from the Andromeda Galaxy. Jaiwo walked to the central platform, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her. The chamber fell silent as she took her position. Esteemed delegates, she began, her voice steady. 6 months ago, the Galaxies stood at a crossroads. An ancient enemy that had hidden among us for millennia was finally exposed. The Void Collective had engineered a plague to destroy the only species that could naturally detect them, the Zendari. She paused, looking around the chamber. Many delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. When the plague began, the Galactic Council voted to quarantine and abandon the Zendari people. Only Earth abstained from that vote. Only humans remained to help. We did so not because we were wiser or more compassionate, but because we asked questions before turning away. In the front row, Elder Take sat with other Zendari representatives. His health had improved dramatically since the cure had been distributed. The plague was now receding across all Zendari populations. The Zendari saw what none of us could, Jaiwu continued. They were abandoned because they alone recognized the threat hidden among us. Today, we acknowledge not only their return to this assembly but the debt we all owe them for their perception. The chamber erupted in applause, tentative at first, then building to a thunderous ovation. Jaiwu stepped down from the platform, her official address complete. The speaker called for the formal vote to reinstate the Zendari with full rights and privileges in the galactic community. The vote was unanimous. Later that evening, as the formal celebrations continued in the Grand Hall, Jaiwo slipped away to a quieter observation deck. The capital planet's 3 moons were rising over the horizon, casting a silver glow across the landscape. I thought I might find you here, said a familiar voice. Jaiwo turned to see Elder Take approaching, his movements once again fluid and graceful. Too many people, she explained with a small smile. I needed some air. Understandable. Today has been overwhelming. Take stood beside her at the window. Many delegates have approached me with apologies. Some seem genuine, others merely political. And what did you tell them? That we accept their apologies but will not forget their abandonment. Take's skin rippled with thoughtful patterns. Trust must be rebuilt slowly. They stood in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the moons climb higher in the sky. Our scientists have finished analyzing the data from the Nexus, Take said finally. The Void Collective has existed for at least 12,000 years, possibly much longer. They have influenced countless civilizations, guiding the evolution of galactic politics from the shadows. And now they're gone, Jaiwo said. Not gone, Take corrected. Diminished. Scattered. Our victory struck a critical blow, but we must remain vigilant. Their kind may yet return in some form. Jaiwo nodded. That's why the defense pact between Earth and Zender is so important. The formal alliance between humans and Zendari had been signed 3 months earlier, creating the foundation for a new approach to galactic security. Already, other species were requesting to join. I have something to show you, Take said, gesturing for her to follow. They took a lift down to the building's ground level and walked through a garden to a small recovery center. Inside, children from various species played together in a common area. Among them was a young Zendari named Ben, who had been one of the first to receive the cure. He was showing a human girl how to build a complex structure with floating blocks. The girl is from the human colony that was attacked, Take explained. She lost her parents in the conflict. And now? Jaiwo asked. Now she lives with a Zendari family who lost their own child to the plague. They are healing together. Jaiwo watched the children play beneath a ceiling painted to look like stars, their differences forgotten in shared joy and imagination. Perhaps, Take said softly, being abandoned by the galaxies led us to our truest allies. Jaiwo looked at her prosthetic arm, then at the children playing together, the future of their alliance. Perhaps it did, she agreed. This is just the beginning. Outside, diplomatic vessels from across the galaxy prepared for departure, carrying news of the new era of cooperation. At its heart stood the unlikely friendship between a race everyone had abandoned and the humans who had chosen to remain.